You are too nice. You're too nice. I know that that sounds absolutely crazy to hear, but I also know that when I said that to you, you felt it in your spirit, that you were actually like, maybe I am, right? And it's because I think that on some levels, we have each become people where we feel like being a good person and being nice is like highly valued, highly prized, more so than helping people help themselves. Now, if you listen to my last chat, you heard me talk about what it looks like to put boundaries in place around family, coworkers, friends, things like that. But let's talk about how we even got there, right? That's what I wanted to talk about today, because there's a phrase that I've been sharing with my girls as they are starting to interact in the world, my older ones, my 22-year-old, my 25-year-old, and my clients, honestly, as they're getting out there. And I say this phrase because I am repeating it to myself all the time. So write this down, underline it, put it on a Post-it, put it on your dash, put it on your mirror, whatever. Their trauma, their lack of ability, their ignorance may not be their fault, but it surely isn't your responsibility. Furthermore, their healing is their own responsibility. You hear me on this? Their trauma may not be their fault, but their healing is their responsibility. I just want to send that home. I hope you are hearing me. And here is why. Because you are too nice. And nice is actually hurting you. Now, the opposite of nice is not being mean, right? The opposite of nice isn't being selfish or unkind. It's prioritizing your own well-being and allowing other people to not use and lean in on your empathy in order to take advantage of you. And that's what I want to talk about. This is something that I've had to heal from. I have had to do a lot of reflection in my life now, when I have gone through the changes of divorce, health issues. I'm in a new marriage that I want to thrive and be wildly successful, which means I need to come at it with every bit of value, and prioritization that I've got. I've got children that are in different phases of their life at 13, 22, and 25. And I also am out in this world with more public visibility than, I've had in previous years. So I recognize that with the platform comes the privilege of being careful what you say. And knowing all of that, I also realize that I don't want to be a person who's a pushover per se, but I also want to make sure that I am honest, right, in what I can do and what I can't do. So to not sound so vague, in some of I'm going to let you into some of my therapy sessions. And, one of the things that has come up as I started evaluating sort of the new direction of my life, in a new city and new everything, is the relationships that I've had. And I don't know about you, but whether it's switching your job or switching your city or leaving college, there are certain milestones in our life where we'll have transitions. And with those transitions, you'll notice that some people will come with you and some people will be left behind. I say that with a real honesty. If you haven't had these transitions yet, they will happen. And the thing I'm describing should happen. Not everybody should come with you. Not everyone should. And that is so hard to hear, because I think some of us who are nice people, right, will say to ourselves, well, I don't want to be a sellout. Well, I don't want to change. I don't want to be different. I don't want to. It's not that. It's that it is completely and entirely appropriate as you are entering new seasons of your life with new goals, new expectations, new mentorships, new responsibilities, that you evaluate with that new lens who is around you. Because your nice self still needs the support of the right people around you. And you definitely don't need, as I talked about last chat, the people who are going to, take from you because they're not respecting your boundaries as you're learning to redefine them. But here's what that comes down to is, as you're evaluating, and this is my therapy session, I still struggle. I'm going to say that like present tense. I still struggle with not drawing people into my life based on my empathy for their situation. Being too dang nice. And when I say that, I don't mean like I'm the queen of nice. No, I can be mean, I can be snarky, especially as a businesswoman. That is an ongoing thing that I think people are always surprised. They're like, oh, Nicole's always talking grace and she's fun and she's this nice mom on the internet and all that stuff. I sure am. That is definitely one part of who I am. I am funny. I like to have a good time. I can be all that. But when you work with me in business, it's not my fault that for some reason you expected that the Nicole who is playful and cackling about cheese is going to play with her money either. I tried to tell you I'm not nice when it comes to my money. Like, I'm not nice when it comes to my business. I've never minced words about that. And it always catches people off guard, whether it's employees, vendors, partnerships, that I run a tight ship. But that is no surprise. I do, because I take myself, my business, my calling, my God, my work, my purpose, my family very seriously. But I am too nice when it comes to being empathetic. One of the biggest issues I've had with the people that I've chosen ownership, right, to have in my life is that I become overly close to them and overly empathetic to their situation. That is an issue that I'm working on in therapy. And part of it is because I think I have a natural demeanor, if you will, of one, I'm just nosy, I'd be asking people their business, like I'll stand in the line at like a Target and, how are you doing? Oh, it's a good day. Great. Are you living in your purpose? That's me. Who does that? What's wrong with me? Right. But so there's that part of it, right? Is I have an inclination to not limit myself to surface level conversations, and that lends itself to me often knowing way more about people than I probably should, which, builds a closeness that may not always be appropriate, whether it's in the workplace or in a friendship or in a vendor relationship, whatever. Right. So that is an issue that I'm constantly working on. But here's the byproduct of that. Once I know someone's trauma, for the longest time, I felt like it was my responsibility to be on the journey with them and extend grace sometimes where it's not appropriate, because I was recognizing and wanted to support their healing. This would happen in parent relationships, friendships, employer-employee relationships, dating and romantic relationships. If I came to know that someone dealt with anything, especially that hit on my personal heart, like I have a closeness, and a personal affection for children, you know what I mean? So if I knew that they dealt with the struggle in their childhood, if I knew that they may have been in an abusive relationship, if I knew that they dealt with some sort of challenge, all of a sudden I would start giving and granting passes for certain behavior. And I say this because I really hope that for those of you who think that this, I don't know how else to say it, think this behavior is cute, like for those of you who are out here saying like, man, they just really, and I'm not talking about like regular empathy, right? Like, life is hard. We're all carrying a lot. It's important that we extend grace. You hear me talk about it all the time. Give people grace, allow people to like, take their journeys and do things like that. But you also have to know where you stand in it, and here's what that used to look like for me. And I've never said this anywhere before, but I'm going to say it here now as transparently as I can. I protect a lot of people in my life. That was a huge, huge issue and manifestation of my niceness. And here's what that meant. It meant that people wouldn't see the full picture of some of the things I would interact with. So I would have employees that would spend money recklessly or not be good at their job, and when I say not be good at their job, I mean in a way that they knew as well as anyone else would say that they're not good at their job. Clear cut, right? I would have employees that would clearly be bringing issues into the workplace that don't need to be in the workplace, that are not subject for conversation. It's very obvious. Or I would be in relationships, whether it's dating, marriage, romantic, whatever, where I would continuously write passes for my partners based on relationships they had with their parents or mental health issues or how they felt, about themselves or their self-esteem, because I would look at them and I would say, I understand how you got that way, and I understand that, this trauma is something you're working through. And I understand that it's not your fault that you have this diagnosis. And I'm sympathetic to either your neurodivergency or your medical concern, or I can't be in your body, so I don't know what this must feel like for you, but I imagine it's difficult. And I would spend a lot of time, energy, and effort standing in the gap to compensate for the work that they would not want to do. And I mean that on both the workplace, personal life, whatever, or friends, who never pick up the check, and you're always picking up the check because, well, I know that they're having a hard time looking for a job. And, this thing that I would label as, oh, it must be a nice, like it's a niceness. It's me extending grace. It's me being Christian. It's me being, a good partner in that relationship with them. It's me being a good boss, whatever else. I just want to be very clear. What you are labeling as niceness and goodness may be entitlement on their end. If you two are not seeing the action as the same thing, it is not actually grace. It is not actually a niceness. It's not actually a goodness. Here you are doing an action from the place of thinking you're contributing to their healing, which the intent of it is, right, that if I'm helping you in this capacity, you are improving, right? Like you are then redirecting the energy that I am now expending on you carrying the thing that is your shortcoming. You are expending that to improve yourself, right? When we talk about carrying people into the next season, one of the first measurements that I've started applying is, have they improved? Have they improved? And the improvement part is not an indictment or a judgment as to what level they need to improve, which is what a lot of people will try to play on with your niceness, which is, well, you think you're better than, or you want me to be like you, or you think everyone's supposed to be on your level. It's not that. I want to see improvement. I want to know that the energies that I have expended towards you standing in that gap have led to something that shows there is an understanding that we're defining my effort on the same level. And when you protect these people in your life, that's another form of energy, so like people never really get the full picture sometimes of the things that you're carrying, but you always know the full picture of what you're carrying, and what's frustrating is when you get into that next life, here you are beating yourself up. Like, did I sell out because I've had to, you guys know I'm big on exfoliating, but I don't just exfoliate my face. I will exfoliate my life too. You know what I mean? Like I will slough off the dead, that is in my life that doesn't need to be there because it doesn't serve me and is preventing me from being rejuvenated. Okay. Like when I have that in my life, like I will remove that as well. And when I tell you, I will struggle with it because I'm like, is this nice? Am I showing empathy? But then, in therapy, it really came down to, oh no, just because I know about their trauma, just because I know what they've had to go through, just because I'm aware that they've had to deal with challenges and struggles and whatever else, all that stuff is awful and it isn't their fault. They didn't choose that. Those things happened to them. It was, and for some, caveat, for some of y'all, they chose it, right? You didn't choose that health diagnosis, but when you choose not to see a therapist, when you choose not to take your medication, when you choose not to, follow up on your care, when you choose not to do your self-care habits and things, when you choose to engage in dependent behaviors, that was your choice. You chose that. Your healing is still your responsibility, not mine. When you are, an employee who may not have chosen to go through a divorce, or an employee who may not have chosen to be a single mom, but you are choosing to not be thorough on your work, to not follow up on your calls, to, not double check, your numbers, to be lazy with your accounting. That is your choice, and I was holding people to a different standard to which they were holding me. And all that led to is, if the last chat that we had, we talked about was entitlement, all that led to was resentment. And I used to feel like resentment was something that was like a bad word, that like there was, and some of that comes from, if you've read my memoir, Nothing Is Missing, some of that comes from being raised by a father who's a narcissist. So if you ever have and I know the word narcissist like flies around a lot, but like actually diagnosed, defined, like when you're in a room with someone, and raised by someone who's a narcissist, their emotion rules the roost, right? So like if they're angry, no one can be angrier than them. If they are it feels unsafe to even express in that way. And, so even if you like had resentment or anger or whatever else, like you would have to suppress that because that was like the safest thing in the moment because you didn't know what was to come next. And so a lot of times, sort of the opposite of being nice to me, which was like, if I feel like I can't be nice, I resent the fact that I can't express how I really feel. If I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, or I feel like someone is capable of handling and carrying something on their own, I'm now sitting in this resentment. And then the side effect of sitting in resentment for too long is it does get expressed. It just gets expressed in different ways to your children, to your partnerships, to your family, to your other employees, or to your own health. Your body will start breaking down because of the sheer amount of resentment and anger within you, because you are continuously pushing boundaries that you have set for yourself for people who not only don't respect them or care about them, but are also in a position where they are leveraging, your awareness and your empathy. And that is a good feeling, right? Like it's a good thing about you, to their benefit. So what does that mean? Right? What does it look like? It means a couple of things. One, as we're in that season right now, which, depending on when you're listening to this, it's the end of the year. It's that reflection season where we're all kind of maybe winding down a little bit, like people are going into their holidays. The temperatures are changing, but we start feeling restored going into the new year. If you haven't done this in a while, I would love for you to reflect on the people around you and see if maybe there isn't an opportunity for you to say, I'm going to preserve a little bit of my niceness, if you will, for myself. Like I deserve to be nice to myself, especially if I find that this relationship is breeding resentment because this person is constantly leveraging their trauma, their difficulty, their diagnosis, their hardship, and they're using and leveraging that to make their healing my responsibility, and healing meaning like whatever it is that they can't handle, and I just want to let you know, if you want to read more about this, there's a diagnosis, which is actually called dependent personality disorder. I think it is dependent personality disorder, DPD. And it often, is side by side with like BPD or bipolar disorder. Like there's lots of comorbidities that go with it. But dependent personality disorder is basically, I'm paraphrasing, please. I don't have it in front of me, but read about it. And I'm not telling you to run out and diagnose people because that's so annoying and it's very TikTok. Like, don't do that, But basically, just the context of it is just someone who was basically psychologically in the disbelief that they're able to do things themselves, right? Like they are so traumatized that they believe that they cannot function, if they are not allowing other people to do it for them. And it's important for you to read about it just because I want you to know that like this behavior, is something that exists outside of you. Like it's not that you are not being grace-filled enough. It's not that you're not being empathetic enough. It's that no, after a certain point, like this person still needs to be held responsible, to handle their own healing. And you can't even take them on that journey. So transparently, I run into this with my older girls. Particularly my oldest, if you have read the book or if you've, been listening here, my 25-year-old's on a sobriety journey, and it's not my story to share sort of the ins and outs and highs and lows of some of the more intimate moments she's dealing with. But, whenever someone's dealing with an addictive personality, it's pretty standard knowledge in both AA and, general medical diagnosis that their addiction in that season is the priority and they will do whatever is required to protect it. And that may mean anything from isolating themselves to telling lies to honestly self-sabotage, like maybe picking different jobs or different groups of friends or, living in certain areas or whatever, like it's addiction is very shifty and complex, but people will do whatever's required to protect their addiction and their relationship with their addiction. That is like the priority of addiction. That is a common diagnosis. So don't be surprised at what they do, right? But where that comes in is, especially with my eldest daughter, I came into her world when she was 14 and she saw and witnessed and experienced things that people only have nightmares about. I am regularly in awe of how strong she is as a standing person because some of the things that she has survived would have put a tougher person under the ground at double her age. So she is someone that I respect and admire because of some of the choices that she was forced to make at 14 and the fact that she's still here. But within that, right? But within that, I also have found myself as a mother. So this is me speaking to me, right? Not to her, but as a mother, I have had to really check myself on making excuses for her, particularly as she's fighting this addiction battle, as she is, which just, to her credit also, my goodness, to have to grow up and be 25, which is a feat and battle in its own, right? Your early 20s are you don't even need anything extra for that to be hard, So for her to fight the dual battle of just growing up and coping with her trauma and also dealing with addiction, I mean, like, God love her. I'm her mom and I'm never leaving. It is hard, but I also have had to say to myself, her trauma isn't her fault, but her healing is her responsibility. And in order for that healing to stick and for her to thrive, there are elements of it of which I cannot be part of. And that has been such a freeing statement for me, as I've had to, I will never exfoliate her out of my life, right? Because that's my baby. I'm never leaving, right? Like, not her, but with some of the relationships that I've had, as I've had to really change kind of what that looks like, I've really had to say, oh my gosh, I have been letting them use their trauma as a crutch, to the point where it is building resentment in this relationship for how I'm continuously showing up for them and they aren't showing up for themselves. It is in my interest and theirs for me to step back and let them be. And as we're, again, starting to reflect on this next season, if it's been a while since you've kind of taken the time to really look at who's around you, who's going to support you, and who you can best support, I'd love for you to look at it from this angle, and see, who have you been maybe just a little bit too nice to? And what's a new way that maybe you can be nice to yourself and support your own growth for the next chapter?